Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Julie Watkins, and I'll be hosting today's travelogue as brought to you by the Geographic Society of Chicago. Since 1898, the Geographic Society of Chicago has educated the public about geography and its important uses. Today's GSC trains students in the latest geospatial technology. Through services such as our community mapping projects, we offer educational experiences that harness the power of maps and the integrative tools of GIS to solve environmental and community issues. Together with our board and membership, we provide educational opportunities for students and educators, assist in building geographic materials collections in educational and cultural institutions, promote new and emerging technologies and problem solving, and much more. With us to present today is Linda Mehnert. You may remember Linda from past travelogues. She is a former board member of the GSC, a retired teacher, and if you can believe it, she loves to travel, and she's here to share that with us today. So before we begin, let me note that we will have a question and answer period following Linda's presentation. So if you look at your screen, you'll see the Q&A button at the bottom. If there's any question that you have for Linda at any time, go ahead and type it into the chat window, and then following the presentation, we'll answer as many questions as time allows for. With that, I'm going to pass things over to Linda. Thanks for being here, Linda.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you for joining us. This is a little bit different than, it's a travelogue, so how different can it really be? But it's a little different because I don't have a lot of narrative. Certainly not an educational narrative. I have a lot of opinions of what I saw and what I liked. So as the title says, this ship was brand new. It's I've traveled American cruise line many, many times before. And so this was a brand new sister line to American Cruise Line. And so we thought, well, let's see, it's 100 passengers more, so the ship is bigger. And, it's where we hadn't been a lot before. So we went with friends that we met on our first American Cruise Line cruise, and off we went. It was almost 2 weeks. We got on the ship on a Tuesday, and then a week plus, we got off on Sunday, I think. And we went from Baltimore, Newport, Martha's Vineyard, Boston, all the way up to Halifax. And it was beautiful. Some of these places, our friends and we had been before. And so we didn't always participate in the planned excursions, but we had a great time. Baltimore, this is the Inner Harbor. If you've never been, it's got a lot to do. If you like history, there's some of that there. If you like, just fun excursions, and they've got a nice aquarium. There's a fantastic art museum that even young kids would love, lots of mosaics and things like that. And this is the upper deck of the ship that you can get a bird's eye view of everything you see. So since this was a brand new excursion for everybody, some points, not many, but at some points we felt like we were kind of the guinea pigs, because I don't think they had done any kind of a shakedown cruise. But we got on a day ahead of embarkation, and they planned a tour around Baltimore and out to Fortress McHenry, which we chose not to do. We did some other things and just kind of unpacked and relaxed. First thing out, they make you know how to be safe. So here we are at our emergency station and with our life jackets on. In the evening, they had a reception. I don't know how many of you have traveled small ships, and I've never traveled anything bigger than this 200 passenger ship. But every evening there's a happy hour, an hour before dinner, and everything is included in the price. So I love it. So at this time, they introduced the captain and CEO, and this was that. And like I said, I thought we were a bit of guinea pigs at times because the CEO actually brought our luggage to our stateroom. He didn't think things were going quickly enough or smoothly enough, so he pitched in. Every evening, during the early part of the evening, they come to your room and straighten a bit and do a turn down. Because this was a brand new endeavor, we got swans one night, hats other nights, vests, robes, we got all kinds of things. So on Wednesday, we started out of the Inner Harbor. This is, of course, Fortress McHenry, and it's a star-shaped fort. And it has all kind. You can do self-guided tours, or you can be guided. But it's best known for the fact that that's where Francis Scott Key wrote the Star Spangled Banner. Okay, so the ship went underway about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Wednesday. We did not get to Rhode Island until early on Friday morning. So that's, almost, well, certainly a day and a half of cruising. And this is why. Because you start in Baltimore, you have to, of course, get out of the harbor itself, and then you go down Chesapeake Bay. And then you have to go down and around and back up into the Atlantic Ocean to get up to Rhode Island. And these are just some of the shots, all kinds of things to see, certainly more like river cruising, which of course it pretty much was right here. And then in the morning and during the day, as you get out, you see less and less. There's a barge with a push boat. And then because we were in the ocean, which is different than a lot of small cruise boats, we really, this is it. What's on the right is it. You didn't have a lot to look at. So there were other things you could do. A few more pictures. During the full day on Thursday, they offered kite flying off the aft. And that's always fun to try and fun to watch. Sometimes they go well, sometimes the kites snap right off and go into oblivion. But it's something that gives somebody something to do. Okay, in the morning on Friday, we are pulling into Newport, and it's a busy place. The feature of our morning was the Breakers Mansion, which is a Vanderbilt mansion. The architecture is awesome. And I am sorry, and I didn't look it up. I know I could have Googled. I don't remember a lot of details. I'm sure that this was just their summer cottage, I don't remember if they lived there all the time, but the Vanderbilts. And this is a panoramic view, so it looks a little curved. Even the light posts were fancy there. I thought the decorations were just too good to pass up. This is a ceiling. The detail was phenomenal. Oh, okay, this is the front, and that's my husband and I. Well, this isn't the front. This is the water side. And it depends if it was colonial times, this would be the front, because most people traveled by water during the colonial times. It was much faster and more comfortable. But because we don't now, the other side is probably the real front. Some more detail. This on the left is the ceiling of one of the porches, one of the many porches. I don't know how they got the bricks to stay up without getting hit in the head, but it was curved all many different directions and it was beautiful. On the right is an iconic column, and it's just got all kinds of detail. This is something I've never seen before. This is a child's playhouse. It's got all kinds of adornments. The little pillars, if you look closely on the front, are actually look like children. But it's unlike anything I saw as a kid, which was 4 walls, a door, and maybe a window. We rode around Newport just a tad, and then we could get out and go straight back to the ship or walk around some more. I believe, as I recall, we ate a nice lunch there. And then, this was the short walls, the stone walls represent the area or the outline of a typical house back in the day. And it, gave some perspective to how people lived. And then on either side, it had a little thing from a diary. So this is from 1867, and it says, rained all day, made jelly, and delicious other housekeeping matters, which consumed the morning. And this was Fanny Clark in her diary. So I bet that's an exciting one to read. My husband, one of our favorite things on the East Coast is lobster. So we didn't eat this one. He just held this one, but it was fun. This is along the harbor as we walked and waited so that we could get a ride back. Love the wooden boats. And this is the park where our boat would pick us up and take us back out to the ship. And there it is waiting for us. And on the way out, we saw other kinds of things like this cruiser. And this is their bay. It's pretty active. And that was the evening. Okay, the next day, so most of our travel was totally at night. That would leave late in the afternoon and arrive a lot of times before any of us woke up. And this is at Martha's Vineyard. And again, because it's so small, the port itself is so small, our ship was big enough that we always had to anchor out, at least all but a couple of places. We had to anchor out and then tender back and forth. Which in my mind, I'd rather be able to be tied up to the pier, and then if there's something on land that you can walk to, or if you're an early riser or you like to run or whatever, that's available. You're kind of held hostage on this ship when you can't get up. Okay, this is the highlight to me of, where am I now? Yes, in Martha's Vineyard. And they had basically 2 types of older homes. The one on the right had been, a long time ago, a tent. And it was part of a Methodist retreat camp site thing. And over the years, they morphed into these cute little cottages. And I'll show you some more. And then on the right is kind of typical, some fancier, some less fancy, of a home in the vineyard. I realized as I was starting to practice that some of these are crooked and I probably should have straightened them up, but just tilt your head a little bit. Lots of big porches, especially for those places that have ocean views. This is the vineyard light. We were standing kind of over a causeway or over, water on a bridge to take these pictures and just kind of have a little bird's eye view of what's around there. This is another one with all different kinds of railings, all different kinds of embellishments. I mean, well, actually, this is a different house. Never mind. No wonder it's different. But these railings along the front here, I've been redecorating and rehabbing my house, and I have a set of stairs that go to the basement. And we've taken all the little, I don't even know what they're called, upright things. And I'm going to duplicate this railing here on my railing downstairs. A couple of the commercial buildings, all kinds of things, of course, in a tourist town to attract your attention. And this is an old carousel. It's called the Flying Horse, and it's wooden, and it's been operating since 1876. And they labeled it as a platform carousel. And I'm not sure how you could have a carousel that wasn't on a platform, but again, I did not Google it, so we could. And this is marked as a historic landmark. Okay, this is the area of the camp meeting, the Methodist retreat area. And on the left is one of the houses. So like I said originally, all of these places were just used in the summer to do retreats, and they were tents. And then as time went on, people began to want something a little more sturdy, stable, something that would be there year to year. And at one point, they could have wooden structures and hard structures, but still part of it had to remain the original tent. And then obviously it all changed so that they were all built that up, updated to being real buildings. Some of them are fancy, some of them are not so fancy in additions, but are colorful. So this is a tabernacle. Originally, when they had all tents, this was also a tent, and it's where they did their meetings. Now it's this wooden structure, and it can seat about 3,000 people. And it was built in 1879. Okay, so when the tents left and the buildings started up again, or became buildings, they were pretty much adorned as Victorian. But then they got fancier with more filigree work, and the type of architecture has been named now Carpenter's Gothic. Have no idea if it's just a thing here on the vineyard or if that applies to other places. But they were darling. They're fun to look at. These are some of one of the previous tents. Now building was a museum. So just took a shot of a few things. They had pictures. It was interesting because they had some old pictures and you could see what it did look like. Okay, we are out of the Methodist area, and this is called Union Chapel. Again, another wooden structure. And it was built in 1850, and it is a church, but often they use it and do organ recitals and other kind of musical things there. Can't get enough of the cute buildings. Purple, who lives in a purple house? Okay, now we're kind of out. There's an area called Oak Bluff, and some of these houses are built on a big semicircle with some open area in between, and then ultimately the ocean is beyond that. So these houses look out. These are the couple of tops. This is the top of Union Chapel. And then I don't remember what this building is, but it looks to me like you have this, huge area where you could sit out on a hot day and have some fresh air and view all that's going on, 360 degrees. Look at this. A widow's walk, although I don't know that you really could. An upper porch, a lower porch. This was an inn. It's gorgeous. Again, the great big porches, upper porch. There's several in a row. Look at this one with almost looks like a lighthouse top on it. Look how fancy. Look at all the filigree work here. I should have even taken a more close up of that. And this is what they look out onto. So it's not a bad way to go. And then back into the harbor, tendering out to the ship. Especially on the East Coast, there are tons of bridges, some of them close together. Some of them move. The one on the left, that span moves up and down. The one on the right is permanently high, so it doesn't have to move. And many beautiful sunsets. This was one of those days. This is coming into Boston. They were kind enough to give us a fireboat greeting. This is just another little boat that's in the harbor with us. And this is one of those places where you could be tied up and you could get off, but there was there was not much right there because it's a pretty like manufactory. It's not even commercial. It's whatever that would be. So there wasn't too many places to go, but you could. Here's what surprised me in Boston. Just as the captain was maneuvering us over to the berth, we're looking over the side of the ship and we have jellies, a gazillion, well, maybe not gazillion, 100 of jellies right there for us to see. So the one on the right is kind of open, and then the one on the left shows how it moves itself forward by closing. I was enthralled. This is looking out over Boston from the top deck of the ship. Looks very calm and restful. It was a Sunday. It was hot. Boston was crowded. We did take a bus tour, and they took us around the city a bit and then out to Lexington and Concord for the history. Chinatown. I didn't put many of these in because of the reflection of the bus lights, but again, architecture, so many different types, so much detail. And another group of travelers on the, what is that thing? Amphibious ducky. And this I've seen in other cities. People put messages that with their significant others and other kinds of things that are meaningful to them, and then lock them on the fence. Okay, here we are out for a bit of revolutionary time history. The big nod to the colonists who protected the area or tried to. We had a talk. This is a visitor center. It's always good to have a visitor center because in every visitor center there's a washroom and almost all visitors need one. More of the architecture. Those are 9/9 windows, which were pretty classy and significant during the colonial times, at least in Virginia. People were taxed by how much glass, how many windows they had. So this house would have had a big tax bill. And then the little part of the thing about the revolution and how it started, and the shot heard round the world was here. Okay, coming back through Boston on the way back to the ship. This is the old State House. It's dwarfed, of course, by all the skyscrapers and modern buildings. I like this one, especially because of the gold top, but I love the grasshopper as its weather vane on top. I'm not sure, I don't remember the significance. I'm sure there's a story. On the right is Faneuil Hall, and of course the top is not Faneuil Hall's top. That's the State House top. And this is a nod to Sam Adams. And this is Quincy Market. It's a long, skinny building, not unlike the French Quarter Market in New Orleans, or there's also one in Charleston. And people have local wares. Sometimes they're not local, but if you want something, I'm sure you could try to find it there. We decided we did go back into Boston thinking we'd look around, and we had been there before. So it was so hot and so crowded that we got about as far as the Crocs store, bought 2 pair of Crocs and turned around and went back. So we just decided to be lazy old people. The next couple of slides are of food. This is one of the evening happy hour presentations, a shrimp cocktail dip thing. And so that's what that is. The feathery things look like feathers are shrimp, and they're not thumbtacked. They're toothpicked onto the base, so it looks like some kind of water bird or shorebird. And the one on the left is one of those encrusted like brie, so it's all melty inside, but which is fun enough to do and eat, but to have that, I was almost sorry they had to cut into it. It was so pretty. And then I forget what kind of our dinner that was, but it looked good. Next up, Portland. Also another place that we've been. In fact, a couple that we traveled with, we met them in Portland. We met them on our first cruise with American Cruise Line, and it was a lobster cruise that went all the way up to Bar Harbor and then hit all the ports on the way back down. So we, again, did not take advantage of what the ship had to offer us. This is an art installation on the water's edge. This building is across the street from the wharfs. And this is an outdoor restaurant where we stopped the first time we were in Portland and had our first lobster there. They're little buzzers that, tell you your food's ready and you can come up and get it. Are shaped like lobsters. I thought that was pretty funny. And there's our meal. This was that evening on the ship. Like I said, they have entertainment. And these are the victory bells. And there are groups of victory bells around the United States. These ladies were all from the East Coast. I'm not sure where, if it's DC or somewhere, I'm not sure where their home port is. Excuse me. But there's another group of them in New Orleans, and they work out of the World War II Museum. They're all delightful. They sing songs, patriotic songs, and songs from the early 40s. I forget what the trio's name was that were back in the 40s, but they're very similar to that. Oh, and that's my husband. He was very pleased that he was singled out, and then he had to get his picture taken with him. Okay, not a whole lot about Portland, sorry. There's a beautiful lighthouse there. There's some fun shopping. It's an easy town to get around in its size. The streets, a lot of them are cobbled, so you need to wear good tennies or something. And then there's some hills, but other than that, it's fun. Okay, Bar Harbor. So we're getting north. We're, headed toward Canada. And this is one of what they term the cottages along the edge as you're pulling into port. And on our first trip, they said some of these cottages are only occupied maybe a month out of the year. Okay, this is a shot from our ship. Again, we had to anchor out and tender in. The tender, and we're waiting our turn. The tender is right here, headed out. These are some lobster pots that you can see from the ship. I don't know how much anyone knows about lobstering, but each lobster person, I won't say man, each lobster person has a unique way to color the float that they have. And then, they find their own float and check it. So it's kind of fun to see all the different colors. There's our tender full. Like I said, it's a little more time consuming to have a ship where you have to tender. And you notice that many of those heads are white. And I was always afraid somebody'd fall, but they didn't. This is the beginning of our bus ride around the area, but specifically to go to Acadia National Park. Now, this is just a shot down the side street, and it is low tide, and you can see it looks muddy and gunky. There is a car right here, but it's my understanding that when the tide came in, all this would have water in it. So it's pretty interesting. We're getting to the area where the tides are not just a few feet, but they're like almost 30 feet in difference. So somebody's house may have a beautiful, nice, water-filled cove, and then 12 hours later, it's got nothing but mud and gunk in front. So you have to plan your boat outings carefully. Acadia Park is quite large. It has, of course, Cadillac Mountain as part of it, and then it has lower elevations with more lush grasses and things. And so we'll just kind of see what we see here. This is on the top, looking out, and you can see the lake kind of in the middle. And then if you look far out, almost to the top of the image, you can see the ocean and then some of the islands on the far. So it was all pretty, always pretty. So you can see Bar Harbor, and those islands that are out there are called Porcupine Islands. And I meant to ask my favorite geographer what the significance of the shape of those islands, of those land masses are, and maybe she'll write us a comment if she knows. Okay, these placards were at the top, and they were really fun because you could look at something and then look at the placard, and of course you're standing in front of the placard, you're looking over it and seeing in real life what the placard is showing. So you can see, and then be able to kind of identify what's what. Now, this one is labeled Seal Harbor, and so we'll see that in a minute from up here. Just beautiful, beautiful views. The first time we cruised up here, it was so fogged in, they didn't even bother. There's Seal Harbor. It's a close-up. Yes, there are seals in the harbor, especially in low tide. And yes, especially if you have your binoculars, you can see seals. And in the summer, they do have mamas and babies laying around. I just couldn't get enough. It was just beautiful. On the left, you see us looking at the peak of Cadillac Mountain. And then on the right is just kind of a close-up of that rock. It's all rock up there, but you can see lichen and other things growing, um, to cover it. And then all of a sudden you have what looks like a meadow. It's just gorgeous. Okay, we're going a little bit down in elevation, as you can see. And I do not speak French, so you guys will have to figure out how to say the name of the spring. But this brings us all different kinds of vegetation. A little creek, more ferns, lots of grasses, trees. And this was a garden area, so there are places to sit and then labeled plants. Lily pads. Oh, there's a frog. That's one of the only right here. We didn't see much wildlife. So that was some of the most. Again, it was just beautiful, peaceful. And there was a beaver pile here. Yeah, even lower in elevation, but far more rock. Getting down to where we meet the sea. On the right is something called Thunderhole. And why I don't have a video, I don't remember. But what happens is that there's this long opening in the rock, and then it flat at the closed end. And so as the ocean waves come in, they hit the end of that, and it sounds like a big clap of thunder. These rocks look like somebody's taken them and piled them. They're all almost like building blocks. Okay, so Acadia, on the way back to the ship, we saw a lobster boat. And the lobster boat, most of them, go out all over. But when we were there before, we had the opportunity to get on one and go spend a couple of hours with the lobster man. And he explained all the kinds of things that they're doing to be sure that the whole industry is sustainable. And they're quite strict. This is the evening. Like I said, this was our maiden voyage. So they had a christening ceremony. The lady in the middle had been chosen because she had ridden the sister ship, the cruise line, American Cruise Line, at least 47 times by the time this ship sailed. And she was also a friend of the family, the Richardson family. And so she gets to do the honors. But here she is. Of course, since we're sitting on the ship, she wasn't going to hit the bow, so she was to break the champagne bottle over the railing. And I think finally one of the guys had to do it. She wasn't brave enough or strong enough. I'm not sure which. And the Victory Bells then did some more singing. And another beautiful, beautiful sunset. Eastport. Eastport is the furthest east of all of the towns in Maine. And it's also the least populous of all the towns in Maine. At the 2020 count, they had like 1,200 people. So it's a cute little town. Here you can see the tide. It had been up higher. This had just happened to be going by, and it's a handmade wooden canoe. I thought it was gorgeous. And this gentleman would be for hire to either be like a taxi or actually take you on a little tour of that area. More architecture. This was quite different than the architecture on the Vineyard or in Newport. This is, very plain, almost saltbox. This is a place that packs and readies lobster to be delivered so that you can eat it. And this gentleman was explaining to us what the industry says, and he's got a device in his hand. It's just a little thing that kind of hooks at one place of the carapace, and if the animal is too big or too little, it has to be thrown back. And if you can identify, I forget how he said that you could do that, but they can identify easily the females that have eggs. And any female that has eggs, if it's not already marked, they notch the tail. And that tail stays notched for 2 or 3 molting cycles, so that, as they grow, so that it stays identified for a while. But they have so many eggs and they lay so many eggs that they don't want to interrupt any healthy female of that age. So they're very strict about that. And so he's explaining all of that. There's how they hold them until they're ready to be shipped to somebody. There are various sizes, of course. And we're off again on the bus. So this is, interestingly enough, a stone ground mustard manufacturer. Not very big. That is one of the stones that they used to grind the seeds with. We didn't go in, didn't have mustard, didn't buy mustard. Okay, this is some of the architecture here in Eastport. The house on the left, of course, looks like it needs some major repair. And then the little one in the front, I live in Lakes region up here in Lake Villa. And if you travel around any of the streets around these lakes, you see houses that maybe not be colored quite like this, but have been added onto from the original little square fishing cottage that was built in the first place. Looks like this is one of those. And back to Eastport. And you can see here we are on the dock, so we were able to, walk in and walk out a few times if we wanted to. Okay, this is an interesting capture of power, a capture of power. And so what they did in 1936, instead of finding a waterfall, they are taking advantage of the 28-foot tides that come in this area. So they have this area, and they've added to the natural island things there. They've added locks, and some of them open, some of them don't. This one definitely does, opens and closes right here. And so at some point, this is open, and so as the high tide comes in, it's collected in this pool right up here. And the lock by the powerhouse is obviously closed. So it's, the water accumulates. And then at some appropriate time, probably when this area here is pretty low, they close this one over here because it's probably not filling anymore anyway. And then they empty this one. They open this one so the water can rush through the turbines and make electric power. And then all the water returns back to the sea through this lock here. So I thought that's a pretty smart thing to do. Again, this is Eastport. And as we're leaving Eastport, we get to see a lot of little islands. Like I said, this is the last town before we hit Canada. And one of the reasons that we got to see so much shoreline as we left is because this is Eastport, and we have to travel out their harbor and then out here. And then all of a sudden, this is the Bay of Fundy that goes up that way. And this is, if you went straight a little bit, you'd run right into Nova Scotia. So these are just some of the views as we left. Now, on the top picture, the island there, that's US land behind. And just a little harbor light. And then here we are with not much difference in the way things look. And this is Canada. And so there's Canada behind that island. And now we're headed toward the mouth of the bay. And we were lucky enough, there were some harbor seals. So a frog and 2 harbor seals. That was our great spot of wildlife. This was a beautiful, beautiful lighthouse. But if you look, there's no way, I mean, they can't drive. I don't even think they could take a golf cart. So whoever is manning the station has to park way back over wherever and then walk and carry everything all that way. Maybe there's a way they could take a lot of stuff out there by boat. Anyway, it was beautiful. It gave you something to think about. And then this is always fun to watch, whether your ship is 200 passengers or bigger. A lot of harbors don't want the regular captain taking the ship into the harbor. Each harbor is unique. So as you're heading in, one of these boats comes up beside your ship. And unbeknownst to most of us, because we're doing other things, 2 people hop off their boat onto the ship, and then they bring the ship into the harbor, and then they walk off. And then when the ship departs again, they walk back on, and then they have to get off somehow. So that's what this is showing us. So the boat comes up, gets close, nobody ever stops, nobody slows down. I'm sure they're communicating by radio. Okay, how fast are you going? Well, I'm going this fast. And these happen to be guys. The guys get off. Okay, our first Canadian visit in Nova Scotia is Shelburne. Quite old, quite darling. We were met early in the morning by a piping, and then 2 loyalists. So there's quite a bit of history here with the loyalists. And those, of course, are the people who didn't want the colonies to be free from the king. And so rather than take a chance and stay, they left the colonies and went to Canada. And the whole group of colonists or loyalists were pretty helpful and instrumental in getting things settled, growing the communities, adding their talents to protecting and and growing the area. So there's a plaque. This was right away, and then we saw them in different places adding to the information. Well, this is some kind of municipal building. There's a clock on it. It's not a church. Now these are stone. This one is anyway. And another thing about the Shelburne Loyalists, it's in French and English, English and French. And here we are, more houses, more architecture. No Victorian here, far more simple, but stately. And I don't know, it's just sleek. I like it. It has clapboards, I mean, not clapboards, it has shingles. And I don't know how many of you think of them, but when I think of really true New England, although we're in Canada now, I think of those shingled houses. This is a historic street in Shelburne. More houses. And they're right on the water. This is an inn now. And this is one of my favorite stops. It's a dory shop. And they still are making these dories as they did back in the day. And it's active. So wherever this is the man that was there when we were there, and he explained how things were done and showed. So they just kind of continue to work on, and they explain things that they're doing at the time. And that's my husband, the man that was encouraging people to help. So he did. And they're working from the bottom up. And there's a couple of them floating out in the water. And they had some people in costume and with things as they might have been back in the day. The building on the right is not a church, it's a warehouse. And it looks like it could be a cross on the top, but I'm thinking maybe it's just a weather vane. They had a nice little museum that showed about the boats. And these were used for fishing, at least the ones they depicted in this. The boat was signed by its builder. The one on the right has a lobster trap in it. And that's what it looked like when we were leaving Shelburne. Water looked like silver. Lunenburg, it is awesome. Another little just picturesque town. Everything there seems like it's made out of wood. And this is a school, an academy. Some detail like over the windows and things, but even more subtle detail in the fact that they use scallops and then regular clapboards and then scallops and regular clapboards. Okay, house in Lunenburg, and these things are called the Lunenburg bumps. And because of the angles and letting more light in than a flat window, they use these because a lot of them were built before electricity. So from the fancy house with the Lunenburg bumps, you have the simple little Cape Cod cottage. I love the front doors. They had these big storm doors, and they had them at some unique colors. This is almost the opposite of just the one. And this one has a little Lunenburg bump on the top as its dormer. More linear kind of architecture here. Hipped roof. Almost looks like it could be a barn shape, but it has its front door. And its storm door is different than the front door. Not much of a front yard either. It's right on the street. I wish we could get pictures without all the high wires in them. Again, more simple, straight lines, but still stately, nice, not overdone. This is one of the churches, all wood. It's on a hill. So that's why it's crooked. That's my story. And you can see the detail. So this overhang has different detail than the upper overhang. Pretty neat. This is now a bed and breakfast. This is double. It's quite quirky. And I don't know. I don't know. I kind of took it, I think, as we were quickly walking by, but it was kind of unique. I don't think I've ever seen anything built like that here. This one has 2 Lunenburg bumps as dormers on the top. So this one's getting a little fancier. Not only does it have corbels, but it has these appliques. They had some interesting ways to do the roofing. Some of it's tile, some of it's just asphalt, or shingles. This is the St. John's Anglican Church. Look at the detail. Again, an all wooden church. It had some severe fire damage in 2001, but it was back up and going by 2005. Again, we're continuing on in Lunenburg with another bump. This one helps it be a porch. 3 Lunenburg bumps. Now this one has a little bit of the, the gingerbready stuff that we saw further south. I love this one. I don't remember. It says Dr. Charles Bollman was whose house it was in 1830. Must have been pretty successful, but there's something very striking and I don't know about this house. Another church, all wood except the chimney. It's not quite as fancy. I don't know that these are original colors. They're pretty darn bright. Okay, so we went by bus from Lunenburg over here to Mahone Bay. And again, it was another just little walk around. We kind of got hurried along in here. We didn't have much time because there was a hurricane reportedly coming our way, and they wanted us to get over to Halifax to the safety of that deep harbor before we might get caught. So we kind of hurried through this town. This was a big building and turned into a store. And this is the backs of some of the buildings that you just saw some of the fronts of. It's kind of interesting to see. An old church, everything that's old always has to have something fixed, doesn't it? That's their bay. I'm not quite sure why it looks so dark and gray. The day was not. And as we left Lunenburg, this is what we saw in the tender. It's just so picturesque, just so cute. This is a lighthouse. And we're in Halifax. Now in Halifax, we were on our own. You get to Halifax, you sleep that night, and they dump you off the ship by 8 in the morning. So you don't have a lot of time to do much. So a quick little view of things we did in Halifax. The public gardens is free and it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. We were there in very early July. So it's absolutely gorgeous, all different kinds of things. I'm not even hitting some of them. This is one of the more interesting ones. These are tiny, tiny little low plants. And they've obviously, are paying homage here. And in order to prune these plants and keep them looking neat, they get something that goes across this garden, and then in a couple of places, and then they lay ladders. So the gardeners have to lie on their stomachs and reach down and around and trim these plants. We didn't get to see it, but that would have been a fun picture to see. A beautiful gazebo. They have things happening in the gazebo sometimes. And this is a citadel. There have been at least 4 different forts here. And this is just called the Halifax Citadel. But they started as early as 1744. So that's something you can walk up to and visit. This is from the top of our hotel, looking out into the bay. I thought this was cute. You can take rides on, I forget which, Theodore, it says right there. If you've had kids or grandkids, you know that this is a whole series of little guys. So as we walked along, we saw different kinds of ships and boats. There's a maritime museum there that's worth going into. I don't have many pictures because it's too hard to show things. This was interesting though. So this has a weight in here and twine or heavy cord, and they send this torpedo. It's and the far end of that line is tied to the heavy mooring lines. And so they send this torpedo thing out so that they can catch that, pull on the little line to get the big line, because the big line would be too hard to throw. And of course, this was back in whatever day it was. But I wonder how long it takes somebody to rewind it, and I wonder how long it takes to teach somebody how to rewind it. But it's not supposed to tangle when it's done like this. They have a World War II ship there that you can visit. And this is a work area and a birthing, this is probably an officer's birthing area. I can't imagine, not. And they had fun things to do for the whole family. So they had these little fountains the kids could go in, and a fun looking playground equipment. And I'm going to end it by, this is how we ended our trip. Big lobsters. And of course, a sunset. So Julie, back to you.
That was great, Linda. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was fantastic. And it was awesome to see all those fun colored houses. We do have some questions from our audience, and I'll also encourage people who have lingering questions or curiosities to put those in the Q&A section. And if that is not going to work for you, the chat is free as well. So I'll get started on those. We've got a comment saying, thank you, very interesting. And a comment here. Porcupine Islands in Acadia National Park were formed from advancing glaciers that scoured off the topsoil and shaped the granite as it advanced north to south, creating a gentle slope. When the great glacier stopped and started to melt, that's where the steep drop off is. So I think that may be from your favorite geographer.
My favorite geographer. Thank you, favorite geographer.
You said that you had, I'm sorry, I'm misreading this question.
Two things at once, huh?
Sorry, what?
You can't do 2 things at once?
Yeah, it's strange. I can't. I'm wondering, was there a general opinion about refurbishing the old homes in Cape Cod, uh, like we saw those super bright homes, the pink, yellow, and green ones? Um, is that looked at fondly as like reviving uh, kind of the old architecture, or is it thought to be like
Yeah,
messing?
I don't have that answer. I don't remember it from any comments. Um, and I don't know. I would guess, as in most places that have such historic areas, that they're pretty strict in most cases about what you're doing when you know, fix or, you know, keep it from falling down. But those three buildings were pretty out there.
They
My opinion is that those weren't original colors. And
I would agree with that. What did you find to be the most surprising thing you learned on the visit?
um, one of the, well, the jellies in Boston Harbor were one of the most surprising view of things to see. I just had no expectation of Boston and jellies. I don't know why,
Yeah.
but that was a surprise. Um, I love the little towns in Canada. I really did love the whole, I wanted to get one of those little dories and bring it home.
Mhm.
Because at that time we had some lake property I could see floating around in one of those. Um, the interesting about the loyalists being so important to the growth of the specific areas. It was just fun. It was fun to see. And again, obviously, I like to look at the varying architecture in places. I can't tell you what all the names of all the parts are, but I just love to see the differences.
Absolutely, yeah. Can you remind us of the name of the windows that allowed more light in?
They were called Lunenburg bumps. Lunenburg was the name of the little town.
Uh-huh.
And so maybe just in Lunenburg, they're Lunenburg bumps. Maybe in that, if that same architectural style was used somewhere else, they might be like Chicago bumps. I don't know. But that's what they called them in Lunenburg.
Well, that like makes a lot of sense with the lack of electricity and um, that modification.
Well, you realize that those were all built before, you know, before modern communication, before electricity. So the fact that they had their own little name for Lunenburg.
Absolutely. Um, what year did you go on this trip?
2014.
Okay. So I don't know if you've looked into this, but do you happen to know, like, would this trip be more expensive today?
That
Probably.
trip isn't possible today. I did get, just before, a couple of days ago, I got a flyer from the company. And you go from Baltimore, not Baltimore, um, Portland, or maybe just a little south of Portland. It doesn't take in quite all the cities, but if you go to Pearl Seas, you can look it up. There's still only one ship in the fleet, I think. Maybe two now, but yeah, Pearl Seas. And just Google Pearl Seas and you should be able to find it. Because they have more than one itinerary. That one, American Cruise Line is only registered in the United States. So even when they do Puget Sound,
Mhm.
they can't land in Canada because they're not registered in Canada. They fly under the American flag. And so this new ship is, I forget, some other nation that it was flagged under, and therefore it can go internationally. So when you go do Puget Sound with American Cruise Line, you actually have to leave the ship, get on a ferry, take the ferry across, spend the day, in British Columbia and come back.
On this trip, what was your favorite location you visited? And you said that it's not possible to do this trip again, but if you did have the opportunity, would you do that?
I am very partial to 100-passenger ships. And while it was nice and the ship was absolutely beautiful, I would prefer, just for size, to go on the smaller ship. I just like it. So I would definitely do Portland, the Lobster Cruise again in a heartbeat. And what it does is it starts in Portland, goes to Bar Harbor, and then comes south for the rest of the trip, hitting all the little ports and several more than we hit on the way up. And well, we didn't hit any on the way up. And so I would definitely do that one again. But that's me. I like the small ships. And I would look into doing other itineraries on the other ship.
Mm-hmm. And what did you say was your favorite location? Do you have one?
Lunenburg with all the wooden structures, and then Shelburne with the Dory shop. And if you look, if you don't do cruises, if you look, all those little locations have lots of other things to do. They have, the buggy rides or whatever. There's a variety of things.
Last question here. How did you make your travel arrangements for this trip? And would you recommend to others to do the same?
A lot of times we start with the cruise company. That's how we started originally. And the friends that we traveled with happened to live in Pennsylvania, and they deal with a Pennsylvania travel agent. And so we would have them take over, her take over actually. And then after we travel, we got money back. So you can start it on your own and then go with your favorite travel agent, especially if they have some kind of a refund policy, or you can do it strictly just through the cruise company. They're very good about it too. And I think they can help you make airfare or air plans. And if you want to come early, they probably have designated hotels that they have deals with to get better prices.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Thank you so much, Linda. That was super cool, and I really enjoyed the pictures and your details about things. That will conclude our travelogue presentation for today. Thank you so much to all for attending and for supporting the work of the Geographic Society of Chicago.